right, so what's up? So, I decided to make a PowerPoint presentation for all my books that I've read. Basically, just trying to give a visual representation, basically, of of what I'm talking about and stuff like that. So the first book that I'm actually doing is, and I've done it already before on my YouTube channel, so I'm just going to be replacing this video with that one, and it's the literature of ancient Sumer, and it's this book right here. So, um, going, going on to the next slide. According to this book right here on the back of the book, it says, according to the literature of ancient Sumer, these translations of Sumerian literature constitute the most comprehensive collection ever published of the world's earliest literature. The composition in this book were mainly inscribed on clay tablets dating to the 18th century BC. And this is on the back of the book. So that just gives you a time frame of when they started talking about the Anuna slash the Anunnaki. The Sumerians called them the Anuna, the Akkadians called them the Anunnaki. Just a little time frame, timeline of this area of Mesopotamia. The Ubaid period was dated to around 5,000 to 4,000 BC. That's give or take. This is basically like the first location or group of individuals in this location in southern Iraq, basically. Then the Uruk period around 4,000 to 3,000 BC. That's also, an argument. But what I know, um, that is usually the happy medium for the Sumerian civilization is around 3,200 BC. This information right here comes from the book, and this is what it says: the early dynastic period, 3,000 to 2350 BC, was characterized by interdependent yet often conflicting Sumerian city-states. And then you have the old Akkadian Sargonic period, which was around 2350 to 2230 BC. Just because they became the Akkadian um, empire doesn't mean that the Sumerians ceased to exist. The Sumerian language and writing was still going on. They just had to make sure they knew the Akkadian language also. The third dynasty of Ur was anywhere from 2112 to 2000 BC. And then you got the old Babylonian and the Babylonian. And you just have different timelines for these individuals, but the Sumerian language and writing system was still in this time, in all these time periods, at least at some capacity, at least. In this book, it says what I've learned was Sumerian literature is the oldest readable poetry in the world. It was written on clay tablets in cuneiform script by scribes in southern Iraq around 4,000 years ago. This literature was discovered only in the last 60 years. That's what's saying in the book. The introduction in this book looks at questions about Sumerian literature. What does literature mean in this ancient context? What does Sumerian refer to? A language, a culture, or a people? And what sources and evidence support these translations? I like that most importantly because it's basically saying what's the cuneiform tablet identifiers that say what you say. And I say that all the time. But, the best way to say it, I guess, to make people happy and not get so uh, uh, upset about what you say is what sources and evidence support these translations, right? So, what I found interesting in this book, and I quote, it says, fictionality. Another way of looking at literature is through fictionality, the fact that it is not literally true. I think that's pretty interesting. Uh, you know, not to say that, the stories about what's up, Third Eye, and what's up, Fear. What I learned is that they always, every time you read something that has sources like this, that's supposed to be accurate scholar academia sources, they always have a little bit that says something about fiction there, or fact, or something that's not true. And I guess that's just them trying to cover, their butts or whatnot. But they do make sure to throw that in there for you to read. So now you have to look at it as it could be half true, half facts. And what I like to look at these stories like is something like how they make movies based on a true story. The story is true, right? The story happened, but the actual story and what actually happened, the facts in the story, uh, is slightly different. Is for entertainment. That's why they tweaked it a little bit, and it was more easier to sell to the people to become an audience who will go to the movies, pay their money to buy the popcorn and all the stuff they want, and the movie tickets, and go there to watch a movie just to be entertained by something that is true, based on a true story, but not necessarily accurate. So I just, I play my cards right and just make sure I understand um, that it might be fact, it might be fiction. I don't know. I can do that by what sources they provide. What's interesting about this is that a lot of people know about the Anuna slash the Anunnaki, and I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be doing on that also. Um, that goes in more detail about where the Anuna slash Anunnaki come from. Now, I've already did a test run before, and I added some things, and I made sure I was clear on some other parts. But the idea about Nibiru, now a lot of people believe the Zachariah Sitchin idea, where they came from a planet that orbits our sun every 3,600 years to come here to mine gold for their home. Well, when you go in this book and look up what it talks about, when you look at Nibiru or anything in relation to Nibiru, the other words that was used for it, and so on, like Duranki or Durankai, um, you find that Nibiru, because Nibiru is actually the Sumerian word, and Nibiru is actually the the Nibiru is the Sumerian, and Nibiru is the Akkadian. That's the word that I was looking for. What's up, Shaman? That was a good discussion yesterday, bro. Hope to have more like that. That was really good yesterday. Um, and it's just interesting when you look at the actual text, the scholar academia side of it, where they provide actual cuneiform tablets for their sources, where you can go look it for yourself and translate it for yourself, which I actually have in my in my Anunnaki presentation about the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative. But here's a quote. It says, "And Nibiru Tulu, or Nibiru Talu, when translated, literally means man from the city of Nibiru. He's the man on the street." So he's the man on. We know that Nibiru is in the is a city, and then when you translate Nibiru Ta Lu, I mean man from the city, and it's in quote, on the surface is a simple. They basically translate it by using the Nibiru Ta and Lu part, and it's just they take like Lu means man, and Nibiru means city, and then Ta sometimes means holy, or so on and so forth, and they combine it, and that was one of the ways that happened. Well, let's see. Um, Here we go. The vocabulary of Sumerian is by and large unrelated to neighboring languages, although there are many loan words, especially nouns, both to and from the Semitic language Akkadian. Akkadian was always in close contact with Sumerian. They were the two most important written languages of ancient Iraq, and both used the same cuneiform script and clay tablet technology. So that just tells you uh, a history of their writing system. But what's interesting is if you keep reading, it says mountains, in quote mountains. We can tell this because it has the Akkadian nominative ending which means mountains, Husag mountains, I guess. But um, they just have their ways of translating it. But that's interesting that that's actually from the book. Um, and then here, what's also interesting in this book that I learned is imagine instead a world which the literate were in the minority, in which only large public institutions and particularly wealthy families needed writing. Knowledge of writing was as restricted in ancient Sumer as the ability to understand the intricacies of the stock market is today. It was a tool for managing wealth, for proving ownership. That's interesting because writing system, from what I understand, started because of was because of trading. It wasn't until later on where they got it more into agriculture, and the agriculture turned into like gods and so on and so forth, which I'll get into that later on in either this slide or I think it's in the Anunnaki. I'm not sure which one. But it's a way to manage health. I mean, so basically, just think about that. Reading and writing was a way for people to say to be more wealthy than the people who can't read and write. There's a reason for that. This book gives a really clear explanation of what Sumer and the Sumerians actually were. Basically, Sumer refers to southern Iraq. This is the same thing that's known as Shinar in the Holy Bible, the same exact location. It wasn't a unified country or kingdom. Nothing like how we have our government today. But each, and even still today in some of those places in Iraq, even in Afghanistan that I've been to, the people still have where, each city state has its own uh, leader, basically. I can't remember the words for them right now off the top of my head, but they have their own person that's in charge, basically. And that still happens to this day. The language itself is called Emigir, I guess, Emegir, which probably just means normal language. So they have a name for the Sumerian language. So we know what the Sumerian language name is. It's Emigir, Emegir. What's interesting in this book, and what's always interesting when you're talking about ancient people, is everybody want to know what what was the racial classification, right? I don't know why, but for some reason, a lot of people like to sit there and talk about, racial classifications. Well, in this book, it says this is what I learned from reading the book. It says researchers drew on a wide range of evidence to support ideas about racial classification, including skull shapes and even the hairstyles and clothing styles depicted in early Mesopotamian sculptures. According to these interpretations, Semitic figures were often shown with long hair and beards, while Sumerians were typically portrayed with shaved heads and clean-shaven faces. Well, what's interesting about that is if I know anything that has any representation of that, would probably be the Egyptian people. They have been known to have shaved heads and shaved faces, so they could have been a group of people who came from Egypt. Who knows? Or if there's somebody on the other side of the world who is known as that, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that since the Sumerians are also known from Iraq, what I've done is I did a little research on my own and looked into the haplogroups. And what I found out about the haplogroups is if you get the DNA analysis of some of the oldest individuals that say they lived in Iraq, they have a little trace of some individuals from India, or the Indus Valley civilization, I should say, and Africa. So it's interesting about that. I challenge you to go look into that. And they also have some that comes from Europe, but it's not Europe. The European one is not as older as the India one and the African one. They really don't know how to tell the difference between the India one and an African one, because at a certain point of that time frame, a lot of people who migrated from Africa went to India, and then they also already had a group of individuals from India migrated back in. I basically migrated into Africa, and that it was about the same time frame. So it's very interesting about that. But that's what it talks about in this book. And then let's see. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So what I found interesting in this book was there is no such thing as a Sumerian race, neither in the scientific nor in the ordinary sense of the term. One is even tempted to wonder whether there is any problem at all. The Sumerians were, as we all are, a mixture of racist and probably peoples. Their civilization, like ours, was a blend of foreign and indigenous elements. They may have always been in Iraq, and this is all we can say. So that's what it says in there. So that's actually interesting to me because the like it says, they could have always been there, or it's just a mixture of people. And they also recognize that there was indigenous elements, so they recognize all that stuff. They just don't know how to pinpoint what is what. So that's I like that, how they put that in that book. Here's a story with the Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the underworld. This is actually an interesting story. Is just basically one of the beginning. It begins by describing how in far distant days the universe was formed and its parts divided among the deities. Enki, the god of the subterranean freshwater ocean, was sailing towards his allotted domain when a severe storm blew up. Now, what's interesting is because I also already have done this a pre-run of my Anunnaki presentation. I have a presentation about the Anunnaki and where they come from. Well, I've already shared plenty of times. And just yesterday, when we was having a discussion with Shaman and the rest of the group, that the Anunnaki, according to the Mesopotamians, is that they came from the depths of the sea. And obviously, this is my second source that actually says that, and that's why I put it in here, is that Enki, the god of the subterranean freshwater ocean. So it says freshwater ocean. I don't know how to take that. I know this says freshwater ocean, and the other source says the depths of the sea. But the point is that he comes from water. He comes from the seas, and he's also depicted as a fish god also. So that's just interesting that I have more sources on top of sources that say that the Anuna / the Anunnaki came from, well, some of them at least came from the depths of the sea, right? And we know that because of the simple fact that I can read it right here where it gives me a source for it. Now this was actually the comedy part for me, and hopefully some people will get it. Some people might not. But here we go. This is what made me laugh, and I had to put it in here because this is it. Like I said, it's a little comedy. I heard it says she has placed twin egg-shaped beads on her breast. She has covered her body with the pala robe of ladyship. She has placed mascara, which is called Let a Man Come, on her eyes. I'm going to say that again. Let a man come on her eyes. She has pulled the pectoral, which is called Come Man Come, over her breast. She has placed a golden ring on her hand. She is holding the lapis lazuli measuring rod and measuring line in her hand. So that was just funny to me when I read that, because I was like, so mascara is known as Let a Man Come on her eyes. Let a man come. So remember that mascara, which is called Let a Man Come. I'm gonna say it one more time. She has placed mascara, which is called Let a Man Come. So that's that. Now I look at things differently because of that, and I just thought that was pretty much a little comedy of the book. So that kind of made me chuckle when I read it. I was like, "What the hell?" But the majority of Sumerian love songs were composed from a female perspective, even when performed by male vocalists. When I quote this, it says, Great Princes was the name of Igigi gods. Now, I also have in my other presentation that the Igigi gods, and it even says it in this book, are known as the great gods, and the Anuna are known as just the name for gods. So here we go. I quote again under Enlil and Ninlil chapter in this book, at least. It says it takes place in the city of Nibiru, a real known location. So that's another hint that Nibiru is a real location that they know of. Another quote: "There was a city, the one we live in. Nibiru was the city, the one we live in." So that's another quote. In Mesopotamian belief, the major celestial bodies like the sun, moon, and stars were seen as the physical forms of gods. So this is, I mean, what I've learned over my journey is that men were known as kings, who were known as gods, who were known as celestial objects, physical forms, sun, moon, and stars. Nana was often portrayed as a bull that was a moon god. So the bull was portrayed as a moon god at one time. Nana was. Another quote: "My Nibiru, where the blackbirch trees grow in a good play." And then Ninurta was one of the most important gods in the Sumerian pantheon up until the first millennium BC. So Ninurta was on one of the so that says on, but Ninurta was one of the most important gods in the Sumerian pantheon up until the first millennium BC. Ninurta's return relates in more detail than Ninurta's exploits. Hold on, let me hide this little thing right here. The heroic guy's triumphal journey to Nibiru after his conquest of the hostile mountains and rebel lands. Here we go. Created like An, which is also known as Anu, O son of Enlil Narita, created like Enlil, born of Ninta, the mightiest of the Anuna gods, who came forth from the mountain range. So we know that some came from the depths of the sea, and we know others came from the mountain range, imbued with terrible awesomeness, son of Enlil, confident in his strength, my sovereign, you are magnificent, let your magnificence therefore be praised. So we know for a fact they come from the depth of the seas or ocean, whatever. And then we know that they come from the mountain range. The whole spectrum of heterosexual love is explored and celebrated in Sumerian literature, as well as the bonds of the family and friendship. Neither male nor female homosexuality is recognized. Though homoeroticism is a defining feature of Gilgamesh and Enkidu's relationship in the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, largely absent in the Sumerian Gilgamesh narratives. So that's actually a quote from the book. And I found interesting that Gilgamesh and Enkidu had possibly, according to some ancient texts, a more of a friendship type relationship. Then you have in here in the book, it says the natural order. How did the world come to be the way it is, and what is our place within it? So this chapter gives you a whole idea, and that's just a little snippet that I found interesting, because the debate between sheep and grain, we are taken back to a time before agriculture, when the guys dwelt together on the holy mound created by An, the supreme deity. So like I said, the holy mound. So now we're not even talking about pyramids, we're talking about mounds. Well, how did pyramids first come to be? Well, they came to be as mounds. We know that. Where are some of the oldest mounds in the world? Well, we're not here to talk about that, but we'll be talking about that in the future. But the point is if you want to look it up now, go ahead, is that some of them came from the mountains, the mound, and some of them came from the depths of the sea. So some came from high up, some came from down below. You can find plenty of places around the ancient worlds and find individuals who lived underground, right? That's just to throw some information out there for you. But just before they actually label it and call it the debate between sheep and grain, and this, like I said, is before an agriculture. The flood story. So the Sumerian story of the universal flood is preserved in fragmentary condition. More than 2/3 of it is missing, and because of breaks on the clay tablet, which is the only available source, only 5 disconnected episodes survive. Although these are not sufficient to reconstruct the entire narrative, it resembles a longer version preserved in the Babylonian poems Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh. It also bears a strong similarity to the biblical account. So when I was having this discussion with somebody on X, I believe, in one of the spaces, He was trying to tell me about Babylonian poems, and I pulled this book out and I said, "Hey, what you think about this?" And they just went berserk on me, like I'm the one that hurt their feelings. I just told you what I actually read and what is interesting. So, like I said, this is interesting to me. Although these are not sufficient to reconstruct the entire narrative, it resembles the longer version preserved in the Babylonian poems, Atar Hasis, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. And so a lot of people a lot of people understand that the Sumerian civilization is first and then the Babylonians came much later, right? So in this reality, this version right here, this is the Sumerian flood story. I mean, you can read more into it, of course. I'm just giving you a snippet of what I've learned in here. There's a lot of stuff in here. I mean, a lot of stuff, and I talk about it all the time. So I'm not here. I'm just here to, do a presentation for this book because I thought it was interesting for, especially like trying to get some people to get it. If you really want to know about the Sumerians and what they talked about, the Anuna / Anunnaki, this is the book to get. Here's another interesting quote. After An, Enlil, Enki, and Ninhar saga have fashioned the black-headed people, they also made animals multiply everywhere, made herds of four-legged animals exist on the plains as is befitting. In this book, let's see, why did I put this up here? Okay, yeah. So in the Enki and the World Order tablets, this hymn of phrase to the god Enki identifies him very closely with every aspect of how the world is organized. In the first section, Enki's importance among the Anuna gods, the gods of heaven, is emphasized, and it is made clear that he derives his power directly from the god Enlil. So that's interesting. And the reason why it's two reasons why this is interesting. One, heaven, I've learned is heaven just means in the sky. So in the mount, higher up in the mountains, higher up in the pyramids, higher up on, whatever, Mount Olympus, for example, right? It's just in the sky, right? So that's just interesting to me. But still here, possibly here on Earth, because they came from the mounds, the pyramids, and all that other stuff. But let's see. And then the other part was a lot of people believe, and I'll go into this in my other presentation, that Enki and Enlil are known as brothers. Well, that's not always true. A lot of times they're sometimes known as father and son. One Enki could be the father one time, and Enlil could be the father another time. It's just different sources. Some people say different sources, different things. So it's just interesting to know that. Like here, I give you an example. Then Enki spoke to Enlil, father Enlil, right? Let me say that again. Then Enki spoke to Enlil, father Enlil. And this is the quote right here. Sheep and grain should be sisters. They should stand together of the threefold metal, and so on and so on. This is the whole thing. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the first part is what caught my attention, is the fact that Enki spoke to Enlil, father Enlil. So imagine you hear it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you hear somebody say, Enki and Enlil are brothers. They're brothers. They're brothers. And then you pick this book up and you get to this paragraph and you're like, then Enki spoke to Enlil, father Enlil. And you're like, what the hell? So it's just interesting. Oh, here we go. So here's I was talking about this area. So Ningazita is actually, some people believe, is also Thoth, Quetzalcoatl, and who else? Who else do they think he is? There's so many. I can't really think of. I just think of those three just for easy sake. But Duran Kai, or Ki, or however you want to say that, the sacred term for Nibiru. This is actually in the book. This is another sacred term for Nibiru, which is a city we know. Here we go. Not only did the Lord make the world appear in its correct form, the Lord, who never changes the destinies, which he determines in there, who will make the human seed of the land come forth from the earth. Not only did he hasten to separate heaven from earth, he hastened to separate earth from heaven, but in order to make possible for humans to grow in where flesh came forth. Here's another name for Nibiru, Durgis Nimbar. That's another name for Nibiru. Kula was a minor god for was a minor deity of bricks and brick making. So I guess whenever they needed to pray to a god that that has to do with brick making and bricks, they prayed to that god. Mermaid, because I know a lot of people always talking about mermaid, and here we go, what a color a mermaid is, and this, that, and the third, and all this other crazy crap. But when that mermaid movie came out, I remember in this book it said mermaid is one of the 7 slain heroes defeated by the god Ninurta, and one of his trophies in the battle against the Sog demon. And then Nani or Nanai was a legendary ruler of Nibiru. So we know Nibiru and Nibiru are one and two the same. We know that because I already said that. We know that most people know about Zachariah Sitchin and his planet Nibiru orbiting our sun every 3,600 years and blah blah blah. Because I talked about that already. A lot of people already know who Anu/An is, right? Because Anunnaki comes from that god, and I'll talk about that in my next presentation. And a lot of people know about Alalu, which is Alalu, and he was the god that was before Anu, and they actually got into a fight, and that's Anu won, and he became the ruler of Nibiru, and then Alalu actually got kicked out. And there's a whole story behind that a lot of people talk about, but a lot of people don't know that the legendary ruler of Nibiru is Nanai. Or Nanny, Nanni. That's actually in the book. All right. Now you know. All right. So yeah, that's basically the end of my slideshow, I guess. So you can visit my website at www.rebirthoftheword.com. My YouTube channel is Rebirth of the Word 7099, and my Rumble channel is at Rebirth of the Word. I don't know if you could look that up or not, but it's I'm gonna make me a little introduction for that, because I'm actually starting my documentary today. I want to start recording my documentary today. You can purchase my book on Amazon. It was a bestseller. It still fluctuates between 1 to 100 every now and then. It's Journey Through the Origins of History. And yeah, that's basically it. So that's my first presentation for my starting my books and stuff, because I want to go back and do all my books that I've already done before. And the next one I want to work on is the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I haven't done that one at all, but I'm doing that one next. I'm already actually working on that one. I have my Anunnaki slash Anuna slash that presentation coming up. And then I'm just going to keep doing this. And like I said, I'm starting my documentary today, actually. I'm going to another location. I'm going to start filming. And that's one of the reasons why I'm making my Rumble account, because that's going to be exclusively only on my Rumble account. Only because it might get controversial and stuff like that. And I don't have time for me to get shut down, anything like that, for having anything. And, I want to build up that Rumble account for basically for my documentary too. But it's definitely going to have everything that I have on my YouTube, or slowly are. I'm doing these a lot more. I have more time to do them, and I'm just going to focus on this for a little bit. So just be on the lookout. If you enjoy my stuff, just subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Rumble account. Go to my website, rebirthoftheword.com, or at least check out my book, Journey Through the Origins of History. Y'all take it easy. I appreciate it. Like I said, I got some more coming y'all way.